Hello and welcome to another episode of our Grimm Tales. I wanted this one to be close to Valentine's Day. It is kind of a story of love, but it is a Grimm tale. So if you're expecting hearts and flowers and fluffy unicorns, this is not the place for you. Shoo. Now. Go. So today we will be discussing The Clever Farmer's Daughter, which was first published in the second volume of Children's and Household Tales in 1815, also known as The Peasant's Wise Daughter, The Peasant's Clever Daughter, and The Clever Lass, which is what it was titled when it was republished and retold by the British folklorist Joseph Jacobs in 1916. The tale also spread into Bohemia, which is now the Czech Republic, I think, and was published in a collection of Czech national folk tales in 1846. In fact, different versions of this tale can be found across Europe, as with the majority of folk tales. Once you start diving in, you do see that they definitely spread across the globe. So this one opens with the classic Once Upon a Time and begins with a poor farmer, they're always poor, who only had a small cottage and a daughter and no land. So how could be a farmer with no land? Is he still a farmer? Well, eventually the daughter gets tired of this and says that they should ask their king for some land to farm so they can make some money and live a lot better. Why the guy hasn't done this previously, I don't know. When the king learned of their abject poverty, he gifted them a field for them to farm. So the father and daughter ended up working together to clear the field of brush and grass and other bits and pieces to get it ready for tilling and ultimately farming and making money. So when they had almost finished doing that, they found a mortar made of pure gold buried in the soil. Now the farmer wanted to take this directly to the king. It's the first bit of wealth that they'd had in years, but he wanted to give it away. And he wanted to give it to the king in thank you for gifting them the field in the first place. Now his daughter didn't want him to because she said, if you give the mortar, then you should have the pestle to go with it, and we haven't found it. So if you take it there, the king will be displeased, as it won't be a complete set. It'll just be a hunk of metal, albeit gold, with no actual purpose. Now her father, of course, ignores her, because what would a girl know? And he took the mortar directly to the king, and told him he had found it in the gifted field. The king took it and, of course, asked where the pestle was to go with it, and when the farmer told him they didn't have it, he got thrown in prison where he had to stay until he found it. How he's supposed to find the rest of it in a field when he's locked in prison, I don't know, but he should have listened to his daughter now, shouldn't he? And he wouldn't be in that predicament. So every day he sat in prison and kept sighing that if only he had listened to his daughter, he wouldn't be in the situation in which he now found himself. Now, the servants got sick of it. They got sick of listening to him, they got sick of hearing it to him, and complained to the king. The farmer wouldn't eat, he wouldn't drink, and he kept getting on their nerves by sighing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, which would annoy anybody. The king had the farmer brought before him and ordered him to tell him why he kept sighing so. Maybe the fact that he'd been thrown in prison, half starved for just not bringing a hunk of gold to go with a dish of gold, might have had something to do with it. The farmer said that he should have listened to his daughter, and she had told him not to take the mortar without the pestle to the king, and he wouldn't have been where he was. Now the king said that, well, if she's so clever, he wanted to see her. Of course he did. So she had to appear before the king, and he asked her that if she was so clever, then she would solve a riddle for him. If she got the answer correct, he would marry her and she would become queen. There's no mention of what would happen if she got it wrong, but I'm assuming she'd be thrown in prison along with her father to rot for all he cared. Now the riddle was, the king said, "Come to me, not dressed, not naked, not on horse, not by carriage, not on the road, not off the road, and if you do, I'll marry you." If you're any good at riddles, please type an answer down in the comments box right now. I'll wait. I'll pause the video even. So, the farmer's daughter went home and got undressed until she was completely naked, so that she was not dressed. Next, she took a large fishnet and wrapped it completely around her so that she was not naked. Then she took some money, leased a donkey, and tied the fishnet to its tail. The donkey had to drag her along the wagon tracks, only her big toes could touch the ground so that she was neither on the road nor off of it. Thus, when she appeared before the king this way, he said she had solved the riddle and had fulfilled all the conditions. He released her father from the prison, took her as his wife, and ordered her to look after all the royal possessions. Now some blissful years go by, and the king is out looking over his troops, as he was wont to do, and a group of farmers had to stop in front of the castle to make way for them. They had been coming from the market, and their carts were filled with wood and such that they had been selling. Now the carts were pulled by horses, and some were pulled by oxen. And one of the farmers had a mare pulling his cart, and she gave birth to a beautiful little foal, which then got up and ran away and laid down between two oxen of an opposing farmer's cart. Now the farmer that had the oxen wanted to keep the foal because it was beautiful and it would probably be worth a lot, and claimed that the oxen had given birth to it, and that's why it was there. Now, this of course led to an argument. Of course it would. And they started throwing things at each other and fist fighting, all in front of the king. So of course he was very pleased. Now, the quarrel was taken before the king, and he declared that wherever the foal laid down, that was where it belonged. The man's an ass. And there it should stay. So the farmer with the oxen got the foal, even though it definitely didn't belong to him, as oxen cannot give birth to baby horses. The king's an idiot, I swear to God. Now, the other farmer wept and grieved over the injustice of it, as you would, because you'd be wanting to throw hands, to be quite honest. And when he heard that the queen was the daughter of a poor farmer and was clever and compassionate, unlike her husband, and he went to her and begged her for her help. Now the queen agreed to help him, but she said, "You must promise not to tell that I've helped you. Now here's what you have to do. Early tomorrow morning, when the king goes out to review his guard, you're to place yourself in the middle of the road where he has to pass. Bring a large fish net with you and pretend to start fishing with it. You're to keep fishing and shaking the net out as though it were full." And then the queen told him what to answer the king when he inevitably questioned him. So the next day, the farmer got up and went fishing on dry land. And when the king rode by and saw it, he sent his messenger to see what the idiot was up to. The farmer told the messenger he was fishing. And when the messenger asked how he could fish without water and fish, he answered, "If two oxen can give birth to a foal, then I can catch fish on dry land." The messenger returned to the king and relayed exactly what the farmer had said. The king summoned the farmer to appear in front of him and said he knew that he couldn't have thought up that answer on his own. because apparently only his wife's the clever one in the kingdom. And the king wanted to know who had helped him, and he'd better confess right away. But the farmer refused to tell and maintained that it was his answer alone, which should have been the end of it, correct? No. So the king's troops threw him down on the floor and beat him bloody and tortured him until he confessed that the queen had helped him. When the king got home, he asked the queen why she had duped him, which of course she hadn't. She just pointed out that oxen can't give birth to foals, and he'd made the stupidest decision, without going and telling it to his face. He said to her that he no longer wanted her for his wife, and she could go back to the farmhouse she came from. Such a pleasant fellow. However, to show that there was no hard feelings, he granted her one last request. She could take the dearest and best thing out of the castle with her and take it as a parting gift. And in response to this, she said, "Very well, dear husband, your wish is my command." And to be quite honest, he should think himself lucky not to have married, say, the likes of Cersei Lannister from Game of Thrones, because there ain't no way she'd be leaving. So then she embraced him, she kissed him, and she asked him to drink to her departure. He agreed, and she ordered a strong sleeping potion before saying farewell. She could have poisoned the dude and run the kingdom, to be quite honest. So the king agreed, and downed it in one. She didn't drink it, of course. And soon he fell into a deep sleep, and the queen called to the servants and wrapped the king in a sheet and carried him outside and chucked him in a carriage. So not only was the queen... she could have poisoned him for all they knew, but the servants preferred her rather than him, which, to be quite honest, I'm not surprised. So then she drove him to her farmhouse and put him in the bed and locked the door behind her. I'd left him there, to be quite honest. He slept a whole day and a whole night, and when he woke up, he shouted in shock, "Where am I?" He called to his servants, but nobody answered, because nobody was there. And finally, after hours of calling for help, his wife came to his bed and said, "Dearest, you ordered me to take the dearest and best thing in the castle. And since you are the dearest and the best thing in the castle, I've stolen you away to my farmhouse." Oh. The king was filled with love and replied, "You are mine and I am yours forever." He took her back with him to the castle, married her again, and they lived happily ever after. So I might have exaggerated with it being a love story, but to be quite honest, she must have loved him, or she'd have killed him, to be quite honest, because I would have done. But that will do it for today. So if you like this video and want to see more, please like and subscribe down at the bottom, and we will have many, many videos upcoming. So give me a like, give me a comment, give me a subscribe, because it'll make me feel all smooshy inside. It won't, but you can think it will.